Hey, thank you, Kirsten. And yes, welcome everybody to hear some information about Google Sheets. This is going to be a beginner's demonstration on how to perform simple functions and how to organize data within a Google Sheet. We're going to cover a variety of topics, but we're not going to get into the weeds about like shortcuts and advanced functioning. But what I am going to try to show you in this hour is how to access sheets, how to open a new sheet, find an existing sheet, how to import data from a different sheet, how to format and sort within the sheet, do some simple formulas, how collaboration and notes work, and then how to download and print. So most of this is going to be actual demonstration today. So a little bit about me before we dive in. I got my library degree from the University of Alabama. I'm a branch manager at the North Plainfield branch of the Somerset County Library System of New Jersey, although I've held a variety of roles, all at Somerset County. I'm the treasurer for the New Jersey Association of Library Assistants, and I'm also an aerospace education member for Civil Air Patrol. All right, diving in, before we really get in, a Google Sheet is a web-based application that enables users to work with data in a variety of ways. There is a computer and a mobile version of Google Sheets, and it's an app within the Google Workspace. Collaboration is key with Google Sheets. The work is auto-saved, and multiple users can work on a sheet simultaneously. Each user's modifications are also tracked so you can see previous versions. And as I said before and on the slide, we're going to try to go over a variety of things. So you can ask questions throughout and Kirsten can interrupt me, and that's fine. But first, we're going to launch into our sheet. So I hope everyone can see that. Yes? Your silence, I'm going to say, is a good thing that you can see it. Okay, so if you were to open a brand new Google Sheet, you might start with just a blank page. And this should look familiar to Excel. I know LibreOffice Suite also has a variety of a spreadsheet software, and it's all for data collection and presentation and to help you keep organized. So just some basics of what is going on in a sheet and vocabulary you've heard before. Each one of these little rectangles is a cell. Across the top where it says like A, B, C, these are your columns. And across the side going down, you've got rows 1, 2, 3, and those are your rows. Each one of these columns can be resized a variety of ways. You can hover your mouse until it highlights blue and you get the arrows, and you can just click with the left click and drag it across to make it wider. You can do the same thing with the rows on the side. If you want to do all your rows to be the same size, you can highlight a variety by just clicking in one and dragging down, then let go of your mouse. You can right click and you get a pop-up menu, and you can go down to resize rows, and it'll tell you 1 through 10 because that's what I've highlighted. If I click on that, I can go in the box and I can delete the number that's in there, and I can change it to something outrageous just for demonstration purposes. So you can see those rows got really big. I could do the same thing with the columns at the top. I can highlight a few. I can right click. I can resize columns A through C. It's already a big number, so what happens if we like cut it down a third? It's kind of the reverse of what we saw before. We had horizontal rectangles before, now we have vertical rectangles. So those are just some really basic how to get your sheet to look the way you want it from a start. I would say it is a very smart thing to do to start formatting your sheet to the layout you want it to be before you add the data, if you are using it for organizational purposes. If you're just using it to collect raw data, you don't need to do a thing. It's actually better if you don't do any formatting to the sheet if you're just collecting data with it. And we'll go over a bit why that is later on. Otherwise, if you're using Google products in other ways like Docs, or even if you've used Microsoft, right, Word and Excel, these icons and the words across the top should all be pretty familiar. We all are, can identify quickly how to change the font that we want to use. We can change the size. It defaults to size 10 just because if you're going to be collecting a lot of data, you might need to have it a little smaller font to start. You've got the bold and the italics. This is the strike through feature, which you'll see in a sheet later on, but let's just start typing so we can start playing with some of these things. So I'm in column A, row 1 in cell number 1. Okay, so I just double clicked in there. If I wanted to start somewhere else, I can just double click in whatever one I want, and you see it gets the box highlights, so I know I'm working in that cell, and I've got my cursing flasher. So if I just write hello, I can highlight it, I can change it and make, a much bigger font. If you ever pick a font that's too big, like if we want to go really big, like 100, and see my cursor is getting ginormous, but my words aren't getting any bigger, it's because my row isn't wide enough. So if I click on the row to get the whole column, and if we scroll down, you'll see the whole thing down to like cell 1000, row 1000 stays highlighted. If I just go over to the edge of that row's line and I double click on it, it'll shift it. So, all right, so I've made it itty bitty because it defaulted back to 10 when I clicked off the cell. Or I can just drag it across and make it really big. Then if I go back in the word and highlight it and I say, no, I really do want it to be like 108, then that's more of a greeting for all of you, right? If I want to change the color, it's very similar to Word. I can click on the little paint can that's spilling and we can change it, either the background or the word color. The paint can's going to do the cell color, and notice it didn't do the entire sheet. And if I want to just do the word, I'll click on the A and we can change that to another color. If you want to change the whole sheet or multiple rows, we know that we want to have these all be like bright orange. You can highlight it from the column and you can go in and you can make those orange and you can go through. And we're going to get into some other color specific things as we go along, but I want you to be able to see it in real time while we do it too. So back to this hello box. Other things like you're familiar with Word and Excel, you can click on the orientation. So if you want it to be in the center of the cell or the right-hand side, you can switch it from the top menu. If you want the placement of the word to be different within the cell, you can do that next to this here. And this is a little different. You can do this in Word and Docs, but it's not always at the top of the menu bar. But you can change how the positioning of the word or the numbers would show up in the cell. Other cool things, if you wanted to do text rotation, you want this word to be at an angle, you can go into this A that's got an arrow with it and you can change it and make it get different. Let me go back a second. I didn't mean to duplicate it. If you needed to make this bigger so you can see the whole word, you can just go to the edge and you can just drag it down a little bit. It's the same idea as we did across the top. What I did to duplicate it really fast is I had clicked on the cell, but in the bottom corner, when you get that kind of big plus mark, you just left click on it and you drag it down and it'll just duplicate whatever you had. It's not going to duplicate the row and the column width and height. As you can see, it's kind of cut off, but it'll duplicate the contents within that cell. Other things you've got on your toolbar across the top, if you needed to link it to a website, if you wanted to add a comment, instantly make a chart, create filters, or do your functions, they're all across the top. If seeing this menu bar is too much and you don't want to look at it, you can go to the right-hand side and click up on this arrow that's pointing up, and that'll hide the menu bar. And that's all just your preference of how you like to work. Notice it didn't get rid of all these little icons, but it did make the words go away. And I'll bring those back up so you can see it. And the words are going to be your regular old menus that you see in most web applications and word processing suites. You've got some specific functions in here that are Google specific, like the share feature, the add to a shortcut to the drive. This make available offline is handy if you're someone who works remotely or you're working from a laptop and you don't always have internet available. You can download your sheet and still make edits. And then the next time you're connected to the internet, it will auto link everything to it. So you don't have to worry about saving a duplicate file or re-importing it in later. And some of these other features like undo, redo, you have the same, a lot of the things that are up here under the words you have in these little icons at the bottom. It's just your preference how you like to navigate to them. I can't always remember what every icon does, or I just want to know because Google does update pretty frequently if they've added any new enhancements. So I'll just go through these menus and we're going to go through more as we go on. But I just want you to get familiar to see how my head is going through as I talk aloud, how we're going through it. So, all right, let's go. These are some of the demo things we're going to go over today. So, and we've talked about them earlier. I'm going to refer back to this sheet just as my notes as we go, so I try not to forget anything. But we're going to start with just importing. So I've linked quite a few links in here for your reference to see. But if you want, you can go to the support.google.com and they can walk you through how to do all of these things. You'll get a recording of this, of course, as well. But to prepare for today, I had to go to support.google.com and look quite a bit of this up and just kind of Googled what were the most common functions that people were doing in a Google Sheet that I thought maybe were things that all of you were doing as operations. So first things first.
Crystal, we have a question. Was there a link for this Google Sheet? She got here late.
There is not. No. This is just a fake sheet for demo purposes. I can certainly share it with you all at the end if you want to play around in it, but just type in the chat if you'd like that. Okay, so we're going to start with importing a file. All right, so you can click on File, and Import is one of the first options. It's the third one down. And because it's a Google Sheet, it's going to say, do you want to import from an existing Google Sheet already? Which you may. At Somerset County, we're a Google work environment, so that's very convenient. If you're not, or you're working between multiple devices, you may need to upload from the device you created it on. And that's what we're going to show first. So instead of going from My Drive, we're going to go to Upload, click Browse. I'm going to go to my download file, and I'm just going to pick an old Google Sheet. And it's going to say, do I want to import the data into a new sheet, or do I want to replace it within a spreadsheet? And you have other options. The ones that, if it's grayed out, it means it's not open at the moment. So it's not available. So for this application, we're just going to create a new sheet. And let's open it and see what happens. And see that launched an entirely new spreadsheet for us. And it's got lots of, numbers and letters and data. And remember at the beginning, I said, if you're just collecting data, you don't need to get fancy. And you'll notice on this old sheet, there is no real formatting that's happened. There's some bold, cells, but most of it's just the raw data. And the bold things are just to highlight, like if you wanted to look at those columns. What this was computer usage at a particular branch. But if I wanted to, I could go through and I could tabulate or calculate them up really quick. There's different tabs along the bottom of the sheet In this case, it's looking at computer usage versus printouts on those machines over a 3-year time. So every year gets a new tab at the bottom. And that's it. That's it for importing sheets. Very easy. I'm going to go back to our practice sheet where we were starting from and go back to our importing tab. Now let's pretend that we want to import again, but we're going to do it from our Google Drive this time. And I hope that you noticed the last time we went in here, there were no sheets at the bottom. So we had to go to upload. We had to upload it from the desktop. This time around, that sheet we just created is already here. And so we can launch right from it in here. I don't want to create a new sheet though this time. Like if I just replace the sheet, I'm like, okay, it will be replaced. All right, whatever. I don't want to replace everything in my spreadsheet, right? So I'm just going to leave it the way it is. If I go through that again and I want to import but I need to open this, I'll just do create a new spreadsheet again. It's just going to relaunch the tab and then it'll ask me, do I want to open it now or do I want to find it later? We've already looked at it, so I'm not going to open it again. Any questions about importing?
Not at the moment.
Perfect. Importing, it's pretty straightforward.
Oh, there's a question.
Okay.
Why are you importing a file you already created?
Oh, just for demonstration purposes. That file it exists in the Google environment, but in a different account. I'm working out of the NJALA Google account. It exists out of my actual professional work account. So I had the option of either downloading it and importing it like I just showed you all, or I could have just shared it. And that's what I'm going to show you next, is how to share a file. So like this practice sheet, for example, if you all want it, and since Kirsten, you're on here, if I just click on share in the upper right corner, you'll see anyone I've shared it with already. When I want to share it with someone new, I can type in the box and I can start typing their name. And so I know what your email is. And if I don't want you to be an editor, I just want you to see it, I can change it to be a viewer. If you do it to commenter, you're pretty much allowing the person you're sharing it with to make notes, but they're not going to be able to edit anything within a cell or change the lookout and layout of it. They're just going to make notes about the project. If I wanted to give you free access to do whatever you want, I'll leave you as an editor. Also in here, you have the option to leave them a note, so I can just say, hi, this is for fun. If I don't want to actually send you the sheet, I need to send it to a whole bunch of people. I can just keep adding more people into it. Type as many as I want, or I could type a whole distribution list if I knew that it needed to go to multiple people that were working on a specific project. This copy link just copies the link of the spreadsheet, just makes it like a URL. So if I want to embed it into a Word document or an email, I can do that really easily from there. But when you've given them the permissions that you want them to have, and you have all the people, you just click send. And then now, in this case, Kirsten and Heather now have this as an email to the email specified there. And then they can go work on it. If we look at this demo tasks folder, and I did share this earlier. So if you see in the upper right-hand corner, we've got different names of people that are working on it right now. So I've got a John and a Rich who have this tab open. They're all actively working on this spreadsheet. And how do I know that? Because I see they have it open because their icon within Google is at the top. But I also know that they're working on it because I've got multiple colored cell boxes now. So I know I'm blue because whenever I click anywhere, I get the big blue rectangle. But I know in this case, John has a purple circle around him. If I hover over that purple box, I see his name pop up. Same thing happens with that teal color one, then I get Rich's name. So you'll see when you're in collaboration with multiple team members working on the same sheet, everybody's going to have their own color. You'll also notice at the top that it will say like the last edit was made 11 minutes ago. And that was by me because I'm working in this New Jersey Association of Library Assistants account. If I noticed that like John and Rich had opened this and they started working and they're making changes that I'm like, whoa, no, we didn't want to do that. I could just click at this, the last edit made, and it's going to show me the same sheet I was on, but you'll notice that this version history popped up along the right-hand side. And that is showing me literally every iteration of this sheet ever. So we've got today, what we're working on right now. If we want to go and look at yesterday and see, maybe I made a change yesterday. And I did on this tab. So that highlights it, the tab, the cell that was changed in this kind of greenish teal color. If I switch to other tabs within the sheet, we can keep looking and we'll find more of them, of those same. Here we go. We've got whole columns and rows that were edited yesterday. And if I want to go back to that version, because the people I was collaborating with have done something that didn't need to be done, I just need to go through these and then look at the cells that are highlighted until I find the version that I want. And we can go all the way back to the beginning, like when I created it initially a month ago. So if we do there, like you'll notice all those tabs along the bottom here have disappeared because it was a fresh sheet. I hadn't done anything with it. You know, but you can go through and say, all right, what were the very first things we did? All right, I knew I wanted to talk about importing, formatting, formulas. If you decide, you know what, it's not worth it, I can just change it, I don't want to restore anything, you just click back. You have to hit that green restore button to get it to show up. And here, see, we already lost a collaborator. So now we're just down to one who's got it open besides us right now. Any questions about that, collaborating or how to find an older version of the sheet? And while you think about it, if you need to think about it, you do have the undo and redo feature, which you're familiar with, is the same shortcut, the Control plus Z, or to redo something you just undid, but you want back is Control plus Y. So, and we can show that here as well. If I type in hi in the box and then I click off the box, I didn't mean to do that. I can do Control Z. That made my hi disappear. Then I'm like, oh, wait, I did actually want that. I hit Control Y and it brings it back. That's a nice feature that is the same between Microsoft, Google, and other products. All right, no questions.
Is there an advantage of sharing a sheet via email or sharing the link for the sheet?
I think it's just your personal preference. The share, if I can get that box to go away, the share and just typing in the names, that's super convenient because then you can really see everyone who's had it before. So in this case, like if I'm like, oh, wait, I don't want Heather to be an editor because maybe we've collaborated before and we lost a lot of work. So I'm like, okay, I just want her to leave comments. I can go in here quick. I've already shared it with her. I just am changing her permissions. And that's a Google feature, which is really cool that you can go in and change it like that. And if I was like, oh, I don't want, you know, this Sharon person, I don't want her to do anything with it besides just look at the content. I can change her to be a viewer. And then down here, like if you needed to share this with your whole organization, like let's say it was a schedule or a policy, or I don't know, whatever it is, you can do this restricted. You can change it. So restricted means that you have to invite everyone who's going to see it. If I change it to anyone with the link, that literally means anybody who ever gets this link. If I share it with you and then you share it with 10 friends, they can all access it. I've made it a web link without publishing it to the internet essentially. And I can do the same thing. I can make you all viewers, commenters, or editors here.
Where do you go to start a Google Sheet?
Oh, good question. Good question. We're gonna open a new tab, like a Google, like we just pulled up Chrome for the first time. I could just type Google Sheets. If you're logged into Google, you're going to find a whole bunch of things like my recent search history to prepare for this presentation, my slideshow for this presentation, because it's stored in this Google account, the sheet we're working on, and any other sheets I've accessed recently. So you can, if I Google it like that, I can either, like I said, access the recent history or things I had opened, or I can just Google Sheets, and it'll give me options. But because I'm already signed in to Google, I can just use, I call it a little waffle. It's this icon that's got the 3x3 dots. It's just the app launcher. You click on that once, you get all your Google Suite apps within it, but Sheets is one of those icons. Because we're logged into an active Google account, you're going to see, the sheets that we've accessed today. We have this practice sheet open. We've shared it a few times. This was this SML Groovix one was the one that I imported. And remember, I made 2 copies of it for demo purposes. But you've got any other sheet that we have saved in this account all show up in here. If I want to do a blank sheet, I just click on blank. But you may need to have like a budget or to do a report or to-do list. Let's open the to-do list. So they gave you a template. It's already formatted. It's just ready to go. Plug in your own info. So you don't have to do anything with these things. You could leave them if you wanted to. They're just giving you tips of how to do it. But if we click in there and we want to say like, I need to go to grocery store. All right. And even the strike through that they had applied stays in there. If I want to get rid of that, click in the cell. I can just, quick glance across the top and see, okay, this is highlighted. This is highlighted. So they have strike through turned on, which if I click that, it'll turn it off for that cell. And I just turned it back on. So that would get rid of the words. But when you're in the template, these 3 are going to stay. The template's more for like an example, but if you want to really get rid of these 3, you can. You can click on the 3 rows, right click. You can delete the selected rows. That cleared all the data without getting rid of the template. And you'll notice that this filter is still at the top. This was a formula filter that somebody at Google made when they made this to-do list sheet. So we can leave it there. So if I want to actually use it now, I can say grocery store. And I can say, pet shop. And what date do I want to go do those things? I want to go today to this and tomorrow for that. And you could print it out from here if you wanted to do it or leave it on your phone. There is a Google Sheets app, which is available on Android or Apple. And you can edit the sheets right from your phone or tablet if you're so inclined. But if I wanted to print it out, I can just do file print like normal from any computer operation that you're familiar with. And then I can, make it landscape or portrait, whatever I need to have.
Can viewers print and can viewers download it?
They can do either. Yep. They can do either of those. They can also make a copy of it. Which comes in very handy. So if this is my to-do list and you're like, I love the format, but I don't love your lists of things you need reminders of, I could share this with you and you could say, make a copy. It's going to automatically save as copy of whatever this thing was called. So if I want to type it now to be Crystal's list, I also get the option of where I want to save it within my Google Drive. So if I want it to be in that home screen from, like I went to google.com, I clicked on apps, I go to the drive, that would default to the start, which you'll notice like what we're working in is called practice sheet. We had this SML GrooveX thing. That's where those things live. So that's just where I'm going to put it for today. If I had shared something similar before and I want to share it with you again, I can just click this box and do the same thing. If there were comments within the template that we had talked about and we liked, I can click this box and I can save all those here. Include resolved comments means, when we were in collaboration mode, you made a note, then I was like, oh, that's a good idea. And then you go through and you say, I've fixed it. So you close out the comment. Clicking this brings all those old comments back onto the copy. And then you just click make a copy. It's going to refresh. It's going to launch into a new internet tab. And you'll notice it's got my name on it. So that's how I know this is mine, the one that I just claimed and made. All right, let's look at a different sheet. We're going to end up with a billion tabs. So no worries. Let's look at a different kind of template. Let's look at this budgets. Because budgets come up. We all have to prepare reports with budgets, right? So this has given me, it's just formatted for me, and they've given me a random number just so I can see what it would look like. So they're telling me if I want to start balancing with my own figures, my own data, I need to work in cell L8. What on earth is cell L8? That means I'm looking at the columns, which are alphabetized. So that's L, that's this column. And then 8 refers to the row. So L8. And if I, move over to link those two, oh, right, starting balance $1,000. If I click in here and I want to change it, I can either double click in the cell to get my cursor up there. If I don't want to type in there, I can look at this box at the top and it's got the same text field. It's just on a longer line. And I can delete it from there and I can say, nope, I want to double my budget. I want to have $2,000. And then automatically, because this is a formatted sheet, it switched that from 50% to 25%. And I'm going to hit Control Z just so you see that. See, in this bigger box in the middle, it went from 50% with $1,000. I can do this redo, like I truly do want to change it back to 2000. If I do that, boom, I didn't have to do anything really. It automatically changed that figure. It formatted it for me. Excel technology at its finest. And I can go through and I can change that down below. So they give you different categories. What do you plan to spend on food? I don't know, we'll say $500 in a month. And then they give you the actual. So I had planned to spend 500, but I actually spent, 1,000 or whatever it is. I can change the figures. When I double clicked in here now, you see a lot of colors and things that are not real words, right? These are functions, which we're not going to get into a little bit, but I want you to see them because this template has all of this function built into it for you. Just plug and play to use. In this case, it's like an if statement. So that's why it says if is blank, and that you got, a number. So you have to have a number, a value in cell row or column B and cell 28. And then you can have, it tells you like the Control Alt and how do you add a new function if you want to do that. And then the sum function is also in there. I know it looks like a lot of gobbledygook, but if you read it closely enough, dollar signs are always going to equal figures. The words that are actually there, like transactions, means that's money you spent. The letters and the numbers that follow that's where you're combining. It's like playing Battleship, right? You're combining your column with your row number and you're dealing with that cell. So if you're a template lover, perfect. You can pick a template, you can plug and play all the number, you can put in whatever numbers in here you want. And it'll just keep auto doing it for you. If you're so lucky to get like a bonus, or I don't know, you got like a tax return, say you get another $1,000. like, whoa, why did that go negative? But, we're not going to get into math and how you read a balance sheet. Because you guys are smart and that's not what we're here to talk about today. But yeah, the templates are lovely. If you're like me, you're going to be a data function nerd and you're going to learn how to build your own templates for other people to use. But that's more advanced. That's not what we're here to do today. All right, let me close some of these. I'm going to go back to the practice sheet. And here's where we were talking about, remember, if we were sharing it. And what did you ask me? What's the difference between copying the link? If I'm sharing a billion spreadsheets like this in one email, which is not user-friendly on the person receiving that email, but maybe I just need to get them all out at once. It's like a monthly report at the end. I might just do copy link, and then as I'm writing my email, I'll make certain words be highlighted blue as hyperlinks, and then I'll throw those links in like this in there. As a start, if you're just starting out, I would just recommend just typing in their email. So if I want to share this with myself again, and this notify people, if I unclick notify, it just means I'm shoving it in like their Google Drive for access. But if I don't click notify, they're not going to get an email that I gave it to them. So I would say err on the side of caution. Notifies what's highlighted to begin with. Just leave it checked. And you don't have to type anything in the message box if you don't want, or you can type as much as you want. I never hit a character limit myself. Maybe there is one, but it's just, a quick, think of it like instant message, like Twitter. Like, you don't really need to write a whole essay in how you're notifying someone you're sending them a spreadsheet. Chances are they already know it's coming because you've talked to them about it before. All right, any other questions before we go? What would we go on to next? To formatting. We're good. All right. So if you know anything about data collection, you know that what you see on the screen right now is a big no-no because we have spaces in between these numbers, and 12 space 9 is not a date like it's claiming it is right now. It is not a date because we're looking at a specific type of program, how many people were registered, and their attendance. So this is not clean, user-friendly data for a few reasons. One being I can't even tell what half of these things are called. So if I want to resize them, I can either hover in between the two rows and I can drag them, or I can hover and double click and it'll snap it into place. So how do I get, without going like 9 and then going in here and clearing it and just typing 12? How do I do that without having to retype it all? Is actually really easy. You can just click on the row. This is the same data in this set that's over here. I just wanted you to see the before and the after. So all I've done is clicked in the row to highlight the whole thing. Then I go to data and I can go down to split text to columns. This little box shows up and it's trying to guess what I want it to do. Detect automatically sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. In this case, I want it to be by a space because a space means it's a new value. But comma, semicolon, period are also very common things people use. But when I click space, that automatically moved them and separated the numbers. So that's pretty neat, right? Like then I didn't have to go through and type and delete and accidentally miss a number or whatever it was. The only thing I have to do is go rename this column because I lost the word attendance. So I just double click in the box and I can type in attendance really easy. And if I want to double click on the row to get it to snap into place, also really easy. Some other formatting things that are going to be to your favor. If you want to bold something, you want to bold the whole row, let's say. If I want to do one word, great. I click in the cell, I click bold, boom. I can also do that Control plus B, same thing like you do in Docs and Microsoft Word. Or I click in the whole row and I just click on bold, and then the whole thing across this whole sheet, if we wanted to keep going all the way down to row Z. Anything I ever type in there forever is going to be bold. So when I type hi to you again, it's automatically bolded. So if we had a lot of data, so let's make a lot of data now for fun. All right, we're going to have 1, we're going to have 2. If I want to go down forever in eternity, I can do that by hand, or I can just do a couple values. I can click in one cell and just drag down to highlight them all. And once you get this blue box, you left click on it and you start dragging down. Do you see that kind of not solid line rectangle that I'm building? I just keep dragging, I let go, and it's auto numbered it for me. And that is lovely. So if I'm gonna have, we'll just pretend those numbers are the names of my programs, but now I'm scrolling through and oh no, I've lost my header. I don't know what I'm looking at anymore. I can go back and I can click on that row and I can say view, but I want to freeze, and I can freeze up to 2 rows. But I want to freeze 1 row, which is the one that I have highlighted. And when I do that, I'm going to click off of it. You'll notice there's all of a sudden this darker gray, it's like a bigger bar that runs across the whole thing. And as I scroll down, that row 1, it stays there now forever. And it's lovely, and I can continue to use it. So if I wanted to skip, I could just start coming down here to number 55 and I can write hi to you again. And notice that's not in bold because I said I didn't want that row to be bolded forever. I wanted row 1 to be bolded forever. So even if I scroll down more and I keep going, no matter where I am in the sheet, because I told row 1 to always type in bold, it follows that rule as we go. Any questions about that?
Not at the moment.
All right. Conditional formatting, I've got a cool example for you. I'm going to show you in just a minute. Formulas, I know that we need them, right? So here's just some like really fake circulation checkout numbers. So we've got the month of January, we got adult, teen, tween, children categories. And we'll say, you know, our ILS spit this data into this spreadsheet for us every day, but it didn't total it up for us. So if I want to know literally, yeah, I could get a calculator or I could do it in my head and I could calculate it all, or I can just hit the equal button. And literally that's all I have to hit. And look, it already was like, oh, I bet you want to calculate the sum. And that's exactly what I want to do. So I can hit the tab button, but before I do that, I want this B12 to B33. And what does that mean again? B means column B, and 2 and 33. I want to calculate the sum total of every number between B2, which won't have a value because that says adult, but that's okay, all the way down to B33, which is my final date of the month. So if I do that, and I hit tab was the button they recommended I hit, and that's what I hit, then I got that number 4,623, which should very well be the sum from this number all the way down to here. We can do that another way too, by just, we can calculate, we can drag the whole row like that. We can highlight every number. If you want, you can go into data validation and all this. But why? Why make it more complicated? Just click underneath the thing you want to, you hit equal. If you want to, and notice we're in a new row, right? Row C now, and it automatically knew that. And it's even giving me a preview of the number. So if I, in my head, am looking at these numbers and saying, wait a second, that can't possibly be 259 before I hit tab. If I want to go manually check the math, I can. But that's a pretty easy way to get that. Notice now I hit sum, but then I just started clicking all over the place. So if I want the sum, if I want this cell that's highlighted to be a different row, I don't know why you would want to do that, but if I was like, oh, I want the children one here, I can get the sum of those numbers and put it over here. That doesn't make sense for the user to read it, but if you want to do something like that, you absolutely can do something like that. And if I'm like, oh my God, I can't ever get out of this thing, I can just highlight it and delete it and click off of it into a new cell, and then it goes away. Okay, so let's just finish it. Let's just get the sum of all these things. You can also hit equal and enter, and you get the total as well if you don't want to hit tab. So if we want to turn this into a chart, I can highlight everything in here. And then I can find the icon that says chart, or I can go through all the different menus at the top to find chart. And it's going to just plunk the one that it thinks makes the best sense. You know, computer machine learning, it's made a judgment call. But we know that this doesn't reflect true circulation statistics in a really user-friendly way. So I can go and pick a new chart type. So if I would rather have columns, I can do that. And I've got all the dates at the bottom. Well, maybe I don't want the dates. You know, I can go in here and I can say, well, remove that then. And now I'm just seeing the raw numbers, and I am understanding or making the, you know, an assumption that that's over a month's period of time. If that's the look I want to go for, or it's not, you can keep playing with other charts if you want to have it, or you want to change the colors. You can do all that in this customize field. So you can go and change the cart style or the chart style. You don't like the beigey background color, you can go make it purple. You want to make it a 3D chart. I mean, it just made it kind of like bolded or have a shadow if you want to have that. Maximize, like maximize the space. Doesn't look great for this kind of chart, but you know, other ones it might be fine. If I want to change the title and I'm like, oh wait, nope, this was actually circ stats. I'm typing it over here, it's auto changing it in real time. I can also just type over here on the thing that I don't like, and that chart editor is going to bring me to that section of the chart and how I can edit it. But with this though, it's just a lot of going through these different legends and picking what you want it to look like, you know, to get it to be to your needs. But you don't have to literally generate the whole thing. Let the numbers and the raw data do that work for you. And then you just go in and you make it pretty. Same thing with pivot tables. I don't think I've ever had to use one in my work. But if you wanted to make a pivot table, you could do the same thing. And I will share this sheet with you, but I've linked how to use and create a pivot table from that Google support database. So it'll walk you through how to do it, but you can play with all my raw numbers. I'll leave this chart in here too. So if you guys want to see it. Functions, we kind of already went over a little bit. And I'm going to show you some examples too in just a minute. Colors, if you want to make it really, really fancy, really fast and easy, you just go to format. You can do alternating colors. I would say before you can go in and you can pick a theme, but notice it's only applying it to that one cell. So that's not helpful. I got to highlight like the whole row range that I want to have affected first, and then I can go into it and do alternating colors, and then I can go pick the one that I like, and it automatically starts showing it over here. So I can do that first, you know, click off of it, and then boom, I've already got my nice chart. So I know my header is going to be in here, and then my data is going to come underneath. If I want to get really fancy, I can highlight it again and go to this border checkbox, and then I can put grid lines and everything to make it easier to read, even though, you know, they're there already. And if
We have a question. Did you say you hit the tab button and then equal in the bottom cell of the column to get a sum total?
I hit equal first, and then it had made that prediction, which was correct. And then I can either hit tab or enter to get the right value in there. And there are many other formulas, just addition is nice and simple for demonstration. And then, yeah, on colors, we can, I mean, we did that all the way down to the very bottom row. If I need to add more rows because I'm going to have more than 1,000 data points, we can add another 1,000, and it did the same thing. It applied everything. The only thing it didn't carry over were those border boxes. But again, I can just, it doesn't matter where I am in the sheet, I just highlight the row. I do that and it auto updates it. Okay, I know we're getting close to the top of the hour, and I've got some other fancy sheets I want to show you that when you get good at all these skills you can use. And we're going to start that now. So scheduling, easy way you want to do it. I know it seems tedious to be like, I want the date, I want the staff, but the date, you can use data validation as your friend. So I want this forever to be date. So instead, I can just go on data, down to data validation. I'm going to add a rule, and I want it to be not a drop down, because drop down would mean I'm going to have more text to follow. I want it to be a valid date, and then I hit done. I know it looks like nothing happened, but when I double click in that box, now I've got a calendar, and I didn't have to program that calendar. I just had to add our data validation rule, and I can pick it. And when I pick a date, it automatically goes. If I clear the date, I just have to hit backspace, but that didn't apply to every row everywhere. But I can highlight the cell and just drag it over, and I get that little checkered box. So I've done that now, that data validation for 5 days. If I click in F, I get the same calendar. I can pick a new date. It did the same thing in E. It did the same thing in D. And you can do that horizontally or vertically, whatever you want to do. You can do the same thing with your staff. So if I want to add a new rule, I can add a rule. I can say I want a drop down. Yes, but I need to have their names in it. So let's say I have Sally and I have Alex, and they're my, well, that's a weird way to spell Alex. So they're my two people that I'm going to schedule. And the box turned grayish, but now there's a drop down in there. So if I want to have Sally, for that date, I can put her there. If I want to have that same conditional formatting, I just got to go in the box and do the same thing, drag it across. Because I had picked Sally the first time, she's going to, whatever the answer was, it's going to carry it over. That same data validation is going to carry on through. But I can still go in the drop down, and I can go like every other day. So that's an easy way to do scheduling. And now I'm going to show you the show and tell, and then we'll do questions. So this is a real schedule. Names have been changed and events, but this was a real library schedule for an entire building. So it's 1 week snapshot at a time. It tells you when everybody's scheduled. And it's by department. So the top, I think, was circ, the middle were like substitutes, and the bottom was like the youth services. And it told you what was going on in every room. So easy to read, simple. If you want to fancy it up, we can make it more colorful. Then we got sideways text, which we accomplished with that arrow for text rotation. It's going to match. You can see we wanted it to go vertical up. If I want to move it and say, oh, I want it to go sideways and backwards, like I can do all that up the top. But now we've really fancied it up. We got circ all in one color. We got YS people in another color. We got the substitutes in a color. We got full-time staff in another color. We got still all the programs going on. Colors can make things really easy to read, right? Consistent colors, schedules that are recurring. They're things that we know that staff appreciate and make it easier. All right. One last thing to show you. So if you took this Google form, all right, if we launch this form, which I do have open. All right, are you viewing the presentation? Yes. Answer no to this question. Okay. Can I learn anything? Yeah. Okay. Great. Do I want to edit it? No. I want to actually submit it because I want you to see what is going on with a form that's getting pushed into a sheet. Just a simple way to collect data really fast. All right, so I submitted the form. I go to my practice sheet and look, I didn't have to refresh or anything. Everything showed up. The answers all showed up. I'll give you this form in the chat when we're wrapping up, and then you can go in and you can answer that survey and come into this sample form and you can see how everybody's answered. You know, are you viewing the presentation? It was the same questions in the same order. And it automatically saved it at the top. So just really easy. And later, I think in June, we're going to do a thing about how to make a form, and then we'll cover this more of how you do it. While you think of your questions, I'm going to pull up some of those fancy looking.
Can you export a chart into an image file?
Sure. You can take, let's go to our chart. Where was it? Formulas. You can click on this and you can do download, and you can do it as PDF or PNG. You can also just copy it if you want to click on it. You know, you can do Control V and you can go to a Word document or whatever and Control V, and you can save it however you want to, or move it over to Paint and make it a true JPEG or PDF. Do whatever you want. Okay, conditional formatting is really fancy formatting when you got to convey a message really quick. So here we've got a lot of green. This is an example of a weeding list. So this came from our collection development department, and they're saying anything that's highlighted green has had no recent activity in the last 3 years. So then our librarians can go through and say, do we want to weed that stuff? Do we want to delete it? And you can quickly breeze through it. If I want to rearrange it and I'm like, oh, I want to shelf read it easier, I can just click on the author row and I can say sort that column from A to Z. It didn't change, you know, which cells had the color. It just changed the order. So then now it's easier to shelf read. So that's a neat example of conditional formatting is what that's called when you have that kind of scaling. Other really cool examples. Let's see what we have. All right, this is, oh, sad. When I send it to you, I'll give you access to it. Let's look at this one, see if this works. Really? We'll go to it another way. You can still see this, right? Yeah? Yeah. All right, copy responses. So this was coming from a Google form, okay? So, but what you'll notice is everything across the bottom are different branches here at the Somerset County Library System. So we sent out a form. We had people respond. Once we dealt with the response, we did the strike through feature to put a line through it. This form, though, is really fancy because it has an English version of the form and it has a Spanish version of the form. And we went through and we took it a step further and we formatted it so it could go, and no matter what they picked for preferred branch, it plunked it into the specific branch. So then our people working in those buildings could just go to that tab. It also made it so if you look at the English version, you know, people were typing their names and it's lowercase, it's uppercase, it's all over the place. But our ILS requires uppercase. So we could format it with a formula, and we just wrote a rule that said, you know, equals uppercase. So whenever anything that they typed went into that row, it automatically converted it to uppercase. Same thing is true with our branches. How did we get it to take from that formatted version and spit it into the branch data that they needed? Well, we had to write a formula. So if I click in the cell, and it's always one of the first ones when you write it, one of your first cells in the thing, but you'll see it's at the top. So I had to filter it. So I wanted this sheet to always pull from the English formatted responses. I wanted rows A through O or Q always shown. And then I wanted to format it more that if this Q one that says preferred branch, that is only when it equals, you know, North Plainfield, then it dumps it into the North Plainfield tab. And the same is true for all these branches, like Bound Brook's the same thing. If we go to the top and we click in there, we see the same formula. We want that English formatted, and it has to match Boundbrook, and then it goes in there. And because we have English and Spanish, you just have to scroll down through the sheet. The top half was English, the second half is Spanish responses. So you can do some cool things with sheets. I'm going to go back to our practice sheet. For any other questions?
How do we copy the formatting from one sheet onto a blank sheet?
Oh, okay. So, well, I'm just going to go back to this one. So if I want this formatting, you're saying I want this formula, you got to do a few things. You can make a copy of the sheet, of this sheet. So I can make a copy and I can just re-edit it and get new data into it. Or you can just click in that cell. If you're like, oh, that's really smart, I want a thing to do those tabs. You can just steal it from that formula. And then you can go back to the sheet that you want it to be in. So if I want to add a new sheet, that's that plus sign in the bottom. Now it's sheet 8. And I'm like, all right, I want to add that formula in here. You're going to get an error message right away because you don't have a sheet at the bottom here that matches those rules. So you have to go in and change this to be like schedule. Okay, it's got to match and then see it changed orange. So okay, we're starting to make progress. When it starts changing colors, you know you're making progress. So it's got to be schedule. Then I got to go into my schedule tab and say, oh, I want it to always be, you know, row or from column Q again. Then I go over to that sheet I was just working on and I got to say, oh, I want it to be Q. Or if I want it to match, in the other case, it was the preferred branch someone picked. Well, if it was schedule, if I was like, I wanted all the data that said Saturday, I could go change this to just say Saturday. But your rules at the top, let me just go back to this other one because that makes more sense because it says the same words. All right, so our formula is here. So preferred branch, there's lots of options, right? But it has to match whatever is written in row Q. You have to, whatever your formula is at the top, this has to be a sheet name, which it is, right? And then this also had formatting. The formula matches the sheet tab you're in. It won't apply to the whole sheet. That's a different kind of programming that we don't have time to talk about today. And then, so you're pulling your first part of your functions from the sheet you want to gather the information from. The second part of the formula is where you wanted to send the formula. So I'm saying the first half, I'm gathering this info from this sheet. The second part is I'm taking a specific row from that sheet. And that's how I'm filtering it into all these other ones.